Good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome to the virtual racing compound. My name is Hasse Rømer. I'm joined by Ed May yet again for another wonderful evening of Sunday GT Masters. Tonight we're at Motown, and it's my very first evening as commentating from the Belle Grand Prix track, which is usually, at least that is what I've heard around. The whisper goes that it makes for some interesting racing. Edward, you know this place a fair bit better than myself. What can we expect for tonight here?
You can expect absolute carnage, honestly, Hasse. It's a brilliant race circuit, but one that really does punish drivers. A street circuit, one of the first times, at least I've remember commentating on the Sunday GT Masters on a circuit such as this, with 9 right-handers, 5 left-handers, 3 of which are in turns 8, 9 and 10, 3 back-to-back. And the final half of the lap is that drivers need to be very well aware of how to balance their cars and make sure they don't either turn a bit too early, because the curves you just saw people pass down mountain, one of them there, unforgiving, but the walls, if you understeer, are even more so.
And that's always the nature of street circuits. It's unforgiving, as you said. There's really no room for mistakes, and for the less experienced drivers in the field, there's really going to be a testing 45 minutes of racing. Of course, the sprint format that we know and love here, so the good old 50% fuel cap. 45 minutes of racing. Expect to see drivers in around the halfway marker. We'll have 15 minutes of qualifying coming up in just a few minutes' time, which means we'll just have the slight time to touch upon the standings. After 2 rounds of racing, it's Coanda Racing leading all 3 top steps of the driver standings, with Remco Barlow leading Nicolas Cucato and Gaston Maceroni, but it's only a few points separating them in the end. 96 points for Barlow, 84 for Cucato, and then 82 for Gaston Maceroni, who's been there up on pace as well. Patrick Gannon 4th, Pete Plastow in 5th place, with Charlie Lund Nilsson, the Swede, who's provisionally on pole position, or not pole position, but he's got the fastest time in practice at least. And it's looking very good for the Swede. In AM, we've got Stephen Orrell leading Darren Fellows, Alfredo Tricarici, and Tony van der Linden, and Andy Spicer in the top 5 there as well. But expect all kinds of things still to happen in the championship standings. Beautiful
look as well. Sorry, Hasse, but there's some
worries.
drivers that we're expecting a little bit more of, I think. Tonight, if practice is anything to go by. Martin de Jong, all the way down in 10th place, but Martin was a driver that we did see a lot of pace from at Monza, didn't we, Hasse? There's a few little mistakes here and there coming through Curva Grande. I believe it was Curva Grande, the final corner, where it was starting to... where was it? Parabolica. Parabolica, the final corner, isn't it, at Monza? Just a few little missteps throughout the race saw him drop back down the order, but his pace is definitely there, and hopefully he can try and rekindle that here at Detroit Belle Isle. Although if there was any of a circuit that you'd pick to be the complete opposite to Monza, well, with Chikarichi, you can see exactly why Detroit Belle Isle is a great candidate for that. Tight walls, corner after corner. You can see the left-handers coming through now, before you got to quickly balance it on the brakes, pitch it in nicely for the right-hander, and then it's 3 more right-handers to round out the lap. Turn 12, one where you can carry a lot of speed, but be careful of the wall on the exit. Then turn 13, again, just balance it on the throttle nicely, careful not to slow down too much, otherwise you lose out on the run. Through the final corner, turn 14, and across the line. You're going to see a bit more of a on board, but not a full lap, I believe, because as soon as practice is running out, that is it. But you can see that first section, the sort of quick right or left of turn 1 and turn 2, not quite a chicane, but still you need to rely on a good weight transfer, and maybe a few suspension settings might help that, trying to get it nice and stiff so it doesn't roll and be lethargic. But again, you don't want it too stiff, because being on a street circuit, you can, well, just see the concrete, the bumps along the middle of the road there, not going to be too comfortable.
Certainly not going to be too comfortable, and you could hear the car just struggling for Alfredo Tricarici as well. Putting down the power, maybe the diff settings not quite on, at least with the rear suspension there. Didn't seem like it was really working out perfectly for him. We'll have the session ticking over right around now, which means we'll just have a few seconds. Checkered flags out. Charlie Lund Nilsson is the fastest in qualifying, ahead of Gaston Maceroni, Patrick Gannon, Matty Forrest, and Remco Barlow. Pete Plastow 6th, ahead of Cucato, and then AM leader Darren Fellows. 15 minutes of qualifying is just about to get underway, and we'll have drivers swarming onto the track. Traffic is going to be quite an issue, I take it, here in qualifying, Edward.
Yeah, we might see drivers struggle a little bit for clear air. It's always best to go out early as possible, get your laps in, and then maybe think about getting slipstream off of your teammates. We saw a little bit of that at Monza, didn't we, with a lot of the Coanda Racing drivers all getting out there together and trying to help out one another. But I'm not sure if we're going to see that too much here at Belle Isle. First out the blocks is, of course, Matthew Forrest. He doesn't like to hang about. You can see him now in the Audi, and you have to say it does look very nice there with the sunset just shining off the VRC paint. Lovely stuff. He's got the right idea, though, Hasse. Getting out early, clear track ahead of him, shouldn't be affected by traffic.
Yeah, and the opportunity to maximize track time as well, to get that extra lap in. We have seen that it's sometimes tight. Short track as well to get the car around in the end here. Which some drivers is going to like a lot, I think.
With 15 minutes worth of qualifying, we might see drivers opt for maybe 2 flying laps and then opt to come in, change the tyres, then go back out again. I think we'll see drivers midway through the session doing a quick tyre change and then getting back out. But here we go. Matthew Forrest running up towards the line now, coming through turn 14. He's going to start the first flying lap of this qualifying session to put a benchmark for all the others. Here we go, on board into turn 1, down through into 4th gear, try to pitch it in nicely. You can see just a little bit of hesitancy to get on the throttle, but that nasty bump on the exit of turn 2 is what you have to be really careful of. That wall on the outside is really eager to snatch you up and damage your right rear quarter. Here we go, down the gears again into turn 3, taking a lot of the curve there, but it seems to handle it nicely. Up into 3rd gear before shifting back down. No, keeps it in 3rd. It does obviously help with the balance of the car, but maybe not the get up and go from the revs that you would get in a lower gear. See there, just pitching it through turn 5 and now into turn 6, cutting it so close to the walls, both on entry and exit, maximising the run you can get out of the corner onto this all-important back straight, sort of a bit, well, the least straight down the gears into turn 7, right-hander, and then the 3 lefters. Go left, try to keep it down into 2nd gear, avoid that curve on the left-hand side. It's very high and unsettles the car. Same here, you don't really want to hit this curve or the 2nd one, but pitch in, and I think he's just gone a little bit too narrow into the corner. Doesn't allow him to carry much exit speed. You want to stay as left as possible before turn 11 to open it up and sweep on through into turn 12. Blinks up just for a brief moment there, but again, just raises the wall, and I think that might count as a 0x, and 0x is invalidate your lap time. So we're going to see Matthew Forrest as he goes through turn 14 across the line. Is it going to be around lap time? I think he just invalidated that with a touch of the wall there. So yeah, unfortunately for Matthew Forrest, that is a key element that we didn't actually consider, Hasse, but is going to be so important. He's invalidating your lap times just by maybe running a little bit too close to the walls and getting those 0x wall contacts. Picarto currently top of the timing sheets. As I say that, quickly Patrick Gannon replaces him in the RPM Racing BMW. Pete Plastow going 3rd fastest just now. Martin de Jong 4th fastest. Much better from Martin. Darren Fellows as well. Actually, an excellent job there in the sort of the Pro-Am class, the Am class rather. Look at that. All the way up in 5th overall. Quite a substantial margin to Baron Glover there. Baron Glover, who did a 29.3, and I think Darren Fellows was a 28.2. So comfortably a second quicker than the rest of his competitors in his class. Brilliant.
And it's not the only time we've seen Darren Fellows be on the cusp of being, let's say, pro-worthy. Certainly on pace alone, we did see a few mistakes was that at Interlagos?
I think it was Monza we saw a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that was true.
I think he had a very sensible drive because he's pretty much the only driver in his class that managed to come through without any incident.
That's actually true. It was at Monza, yeah, where
Monza
that wasn't a good one. But we did see that early incident at the coming out of the Ascari chicane, massive pileup, and you have to say here, Edward, that the layout of this track, it doesn't leave much room for error. We've touched upon it already, but it's certainly true nonetheless. And everybody's gonna have to keep a really straight face for the opening 2-3 laps here. It's gonna be more than hectic, I think.
Absolutely, as Patrick Gannon has just set the fastest lap of the qualifying session, extending his advantage now to 0.6 of a second to Nicholas Cucato. See if we can watch the driver that's currently on provisional pole, Patrick Gannon, as he's coming through to maybe round out yet one more lap. No, opting to peel off into the pits. Nicholas Cucato, however, just about to start a lap. He's on his out lap right now, so it seems to be that drivers do opt for maybe 1 or 2 laps and then decide peel off the track, get into the pits and come out for a fresh pair of boots. You can see so many drivers now on the left-hand side of your screen, that blue text signifying that they are on their out laps. They've opted for a fresh set of tyres and they're going to go. And of course, there isn't any limit from the amount of tyres you can take in a practice or qualifying session. So, deciding to take as much advantage of it as possible. Charlie Nilsson, second fastest and looking very good indeed. The Swede showing his national colours properly on our screens for the first time this season. But hopefully, he'll look to see if he can take a victory for the first time this season as well.
He certainly looked like having the pace to do so, and looking quite comfortable. He has a good setup for the car as well. It's one of these tracks, Edward, where I think the setup of the car is just going to be so important. One thing is the skill and your skill level as a driver, but if you're struggling with the car, if you're fighting against the car in every corner, if it wants to rotate too much on you, if it's not really settled on a track like this, it's just going to demand all that more of you. Looks like the Audi is going fairly well for Charlie Nilsson, but we know the story of that Audi R8 as well. Tends to be a beast that goes very well until it doesn't.
Looked a good lap there for Charlie until he got to that turn 11, just coming through that tricky complex of the three left-handers. He just stayed a bit too close to the right-hand side, and that meant he had to slow it right the way down onto the apex of turn 11 and couldn't carry the momentum, and I think that cost him around about 4 tenths. That's going to cost Mark de Jong more than just a few tenths. That's going to cost him a lap attempt, but he's currently 4th fastest, so he'll be able to come into the pits, get a fresh pair of boots on and go for a final run of maybe 2-3 laps, you would imagine. Matthew Forrest now, a little bit cautious through turn 12, coming through turn 13. That looked a lot nicer.
This is outlap though, so
this is an outlap, so
set it up.
I think you're right there, Hasse. Into turn 1, avoiding the curb, just trying to get it bounced nicely. You're going to see this bump on the exit here. Cars really get unsettled there, and you might see a few drivers, maybe even on the first lap with cold tyres, struggling a lot through there.
That's always difficult on any track, I'd say, but on the concrete surface somewhere like here where grip is at a minimum, it's always going to be all the harder. One thing we've spoken about before, but something that iRacing is, in my opinion at least, still very much unrivaled in the field of, is just how real it looks as the car is traveling across the road surface and the way the suspension reacts to every bump in the road. It's really great to see, and I say that until you see two cars come together, and one of them is gonna go for a massive flyer. Not a flyer for Matthew Forrest on this lap. Getting out of the way of his teammate. A little bit of a knock to the rear end of the car, I think, as he turned it around. Very much demonstrating just how much of a tricky one the Audi can be to handle.
Yeah, and I think maybe his teammate should probably tell him that he's got a little bit of rear end damage and needs to come into the pits to get that repaired, because he won't be able to set a quicker lap time with that downforce loss. But no, he's going to have to carry on, you know. So very interesting. Pete Plasda, though, was not on a fly lap. You can see again so many drivers on their out laps for their final 5 minutes of qualifying to try and see if they can dethrone Patrick Gannon from pole position. But actually, Matthew Forrest, I think, is opting rather to maybe help out his teammate Pete Plasda, probably down that back straight in towards turn 7 and potentially peeling off the road. It depends on how good of a lap Matthew Forrest is on, even with that amount of damage.
I'm looking at it now. It doesn't really have the best of benchmarks. He's just under a second down on Patrick Gannon's pole time at the moment. Still Gannon ahead of Charlie Nilsson, then Remco Barlow and Martin de Jong.
Personal bests in his first and second sector there, so the 63 car looking very nice as Gaston Messeroni. He did manage to go second fastest, but a second bite of the cherry is, proving a little bit too much for him as he again makes a mistake coming out of turn 2. That wall, we've seen it claim more than just himself so far today, and I definitely don't think that'll be the last car we see meeting that barrier. Maybe not even the last car we see meeting that barrier in this session, Hasse, because there's still about 5, maybe 4.5 minutes to go. Pete Plasdal to see what he can do. Personal best in the first, second and third sectors. I think Matthew Forrest just clips a wall. Pushing it very close to the line, these two drivers. What will Pete Plasnow's time be as he breaks the timing beam? Was 8th fastest and does not improve. Even with all of those personal bests, it seemed that 4th sector really, really cost him because his final sector was an improvement as well.
Yeah, but the 4th sector was 4/10 of a second down on Patrick Gannon, so he's lost some time as well around that. Remco Barlow, quickest of all in sector 3. Now Charlie Lund-Nielsen, quickest of all in sector 4.
Looked a very good lap here by Remco Barlow, that 4th sector as well. Very nice indeed, but improves his time, does not improve his position, stays 4th fastest. Charlie Lund-Nielsen, he improves on his time and his position, goes up onto the front row, but Patrick Gannon improved his time a little bit more as well, so that gap stays 1/10 of a second apart.
Brilliant.
Left to go. Drivers might be able to opt to go for maybe one last glory run. If they come into the pits now, they can get a fresh pair of tyres on, fresh set of tyres on rather, and then come out for a final 3-minute flurry, which I think we're going to see now as Martin de Jong is on an outlap. Patrick Gannon is also on an outlap, but Charlie Lund-Nielsen is on a flying lap, and flying he is certainly doing because he's just done a personal best in sector 3, and I think we might see. Actually, no, that is not a personal best in sector 3. Right, that was his last lap of sector 3, but sector 1 was a personal best and very nice indeed as well. Sector 2 was marginally quicker than Patrick Gannon as well. All to see what he can do into sector 4. All important, stay as left as you can through here. It goes very, very deep through there. And look how much he has to slow it down there, almost to a standstill on the apex of turn 11 there, Hasse.
Yeah, but if you can get on the throttle early enough, that's a good way to do it. Might have lost a little bit there. You'd expect the Audi to have decent traction coming out of the slow corners. As he crosses the line, what's it going to be? It's going to be a slight improvement, but still not enough. He's about 0.08 of a second off of Patrick Gannon here. It's an outlap now for Maseroni. Barlow is in the pits, so not expecting to see him on track anymore for this qualifying session. Martin de Jong's in an outlap alongside Nicolas Cucato. And then Matthew Terry, who we haven't really spoken about the American so far. He's doing rather well for himself in 7th at the moment here.
And very nicely indeed, actually, Matthew Terry. Flying a little bit under our radar, but definitely having a nice time of things here at Belle Isle. One of the Americans' home races this season. First time we come to the USA in this Sunday GT Masters season. There's a little bit of a touch there, and I think that might be Matthew Forrest yet again, pushing as hard as he can, just clipping the balls there. About that, I don't think that is actually Matthew Forrest. Was that? I think that might have been Chris Roberts, just pushing a little too hard, perhaps. Charlie Lund-Nielsen now on pit exit. But will he have enough time to get through and start a flying lap? I don't think he will.
I don't think so either. That's not going to happen for him. 40 seconds now. That's surely not going to happen, Edward. I cannot see it being possible with lap times around 1.5 minutes. That's going to get him halfway around.
Where is Martin de Jong, by the way? Because I've just seen he's had a purple first sector. Just coming to the end of this lap, so we'll see what he can do. A personal best in the 4th sector as well. This could be a very quick lap from the independent driver, making his way through the final few corners now, blitzing it up to the line break. The timing beam will be able to start one more lap and goes 3rd fastest. Excellent stuff there from the Dutchman, Martin de Jong. And look how close he got to the wall there. You could just tell that he's pushing ever so hard, and this might be a challenge for pole position. He's got to find just over 1/10 of a second. There's such a thin margin around this lap. Well, now he needs to find about 0.2 of a second as Patrick Gannon goes for the first time in this qualifying session into the 26s, a 1:26.923. That, well, he feels that that's going to be enough for pole position. He hopes that it'll be enough for pole position, but this man that we're watching now, Martin de Jong, who's just done a personal best 2nd sector, is going to try and take that away from him third sector, leaving a little bit to be desired. 3/10 slower than Patrick Gannon last time by. Needs to do a lot here in this fourth sector.
Yeah, that's going to be very hard. Very hard indeed. Oh, and Gaston Maceroni betters De Jong by less than a tenth as well. So now there's really something to be had there on the line for Martin De Jong.
1/100th of a second, exactly the difference between Maceroni and De Jong. Battle for third place definitely on, but maybe Martin De Jong can find 2/10 and sneak himself. Was that a touch that invalidated his lap? Yes, it was. And now we will never know what Martin De Jong could have done there. Maybe he might have found himself up onto the front row of the grid track position. Is key on a street circuit such as this, but Patrick Gannon, what performance. Right at the end there, sealing the deal with yet another fastest lap into the 26s. No other driver doing that feat. And, well, we can see him there on pole position.
Absolutely so. Patrick Gannon with a brilliant pole time of 1:26.923 ahead of Charlie Lundilson and Gaston Maceroni with Martin De Jong on row 2. Remco Barlow gets the company of Nicolas Cucato with Matthew Terry and Pete Plastow on row 4. It's another Matthew leading out the fifth row of cars with Matthew Foro in 9th place ahead of AM-class pole sitter Darren Fellows. Chris Roberts and Alfredo Tricarici joins company on row 6. 7th row of cars going to be Chris Pio with Cody Steeg, then Baron Glover in 15th and Ari Sherwood. Tony van der Linden with Matty Maddox on the 9th row of action with the final and last row of cars for tonight going to be Matt Sisler and Andy Spicer. Few Americans there not really enjoying home field advantage all that much. It's going to be about a minute from now and we're going to see just what Belle has in store for the Sunday GT Masters tonight. Coming off the back of a 90-minute race. Just what it's going to be here.
Exactly as well. What Patrick Gannon can do around here, Hasse. Pole position in the hot lap shootout pretty much out qualifying, but in the race it's something completely different. He needs to be consistent. He can't afford to make any mistakes, which we've seen some drivers do a little bit more than others. Patrick Gannon has to keep his head cool. But another thing I want to see from all of these drivers, Hassan, I'm sure you're the same, is that awareness that we maybe I think didn't quite see at Monza when there was that little moment coming out of Ascari when there was that half spin and the drivers I don't think slow down enough. Here, especially on a street circuit like this, you want to avoid damage at all costs. So if there's a car spinning, yellow flags, you have to slow down almost to a crawl because it's like pinball. The walls will just bounce the cars left, right, and center, and you can easily get caught up yourself.
Yeah, there isn't really any way to get around it, and I say that like it's foreboding something terrible. I didn't really think about that, Edward. Bad pun, not intended, indeed. But there's no way to get around the fact that you really have to be just that little bit extra cautious. So many places on this track where there's literally nowhere to go. Now Patrick Gannon is going quite slowly indeed, and he's gone. He's gone early. And we've got 45.
Just right. There we go.
45 minutes of racing underway as they cross the line into turn 1 they go. Now let's see if we get everyone safely through. A nice little bit of spread on the field there. That's gonna...
Oh my word, 4 wide, Hasse, 4 wide for third place. Remco Barlow just about sealing the deal there, but look at how close they all are together on the open lap. Cold tyres on Martin De Jong. The cojones on that man to try and swing it all the way around the outside into turn 3. That takes a lot of guts, but I think he made the better choice there just to back out of it a touch. Matthew Forrest scrapping with his teammate Pete Plastow, with Matthew Terry waiting in the wings to pick up the pieces. But thankfully, Hasse, we've seen them all get through relatively unscathed. Here's a replay of the start. Remco Barlow.
Did you see that slide? That was what caused the forward. Huge moment there. That was Nicolas
Gaston Maceroni.
That was Maceroni.
That was Maceroni, yeah, the championship leader, I believe.
Remco Barlow's our championship leader. Maceroni's very much up there. That would not have been the perfect start for him at all. He's lost 3 places now, down into 6th place. The Argentine driver. Patrick Gannon there with a healthy lead. And especially the gap.
As that's Pete Plasnow with a moment, just losing the rear end of the car. And needs to be very patient in getting back up and running. This was it. Just that turn 11. And he hits the front end as well. That's going to be very bad news. Front end downforce loss, maybe even a potential amount of suspension damage, but we'll see if he can bring it through till the pit window opens in around about 10 or so minutes time. Charlie Lund-Nielsen keeping Patrick Gannon honest, not letting him get too far ahead, but that gap is just over a second now. Patrick really is flying here. So you see Nicholas Kakato, few car lengths back from Merton de Jong. Might have had a good start, but I think just got caught out a little bit when Maceroni, I think, took a little bit too much of the corner and slid and clipped the rear end, and hopefully that hasn't left any damage lingering on Maceroni's car, because we know how quick he is. We want to see him up at the front fighting for position. Speaking of fighting for position, look at this. Matt Maddox looking up the inside, but just losing out there to this man, Tony van der Linden. Stage 1 Racing able to hang on to 5th place in class. First place in class, though, is Darren Fellows in the BDM Racing car. Kept himself trouble-free in the opening few corners and seems to be able to extend a bit of an advantage as well to Alfredo Tricarici.
Yeah, and it's what you want to see as a driver at this moment. If you can just eke out the gap to whoever's behind, get that little bit of clear air to sort of drive your own lines, then you're gonna be. Oh, there's a touch between Kakato and whoever that was a teammate. He's gonna be on the race line.
That was Maceroni.
Maceroni and Kakato has come together, and that was a major incident. And I think Kakato was actually let off the hook quite easily there. Might have taken a bit of suspension damage there. I'm not quite sure.
He got away with it there completely because he touched one of those sort of tyre barriers. If he hit one of the concrete barriers, he would have been absolutely shafted. But that was Maceroni just out braking himself, just braking far too late. And then we see, if we can, what happened to Kakato. But I think he just tapped one of those tyre barriers and thankfully came through relatively unscathed. I think there's a bit more rear end damage that is going to unsettle the car and maybe cause rear end instability. There's the touch, there's the big slide, and very grateful that there's that softer barrier.
Yeah, but it's a big tap indeed, just going on board. Oh, we of course cannot see his steering wheel, so that's not going to be any use.
I think he seems to be fine for now. If there was steering angle damage through those corners, you'd see it sort of trying to break away on him, trying to loosen up at the rear end. So it seems all right for now for Kakato, but yeah, there's going to be some stern words, I think, in the Coanda Racing team briefing after the race, that's for certain, because that has just cost the championship leader 2 positions there, one to his teammate and one to their rivals, Matthew Forrest. Charlie Lund-Nielsen, meanwhile, up at the front of the race, is just losing touch to Patrick Gannon a little bit. Patrick with the fastest lap out of anyone last time by with a 27.3. Head of Mr. Charlie Lund-Nielsen. Charlie's still lapping very nicely indeed. It seems to be Patrick Gannon, class of himself, lapping about half a second faster than everyone else. And then you've got Lund, Barlow, Martin de Jong, Maceroni, Matthew Forrest, all there or thereabouts on similar pace. So we might see packs starting to form and the packs starting to break away. Who knows though, of course. Drivers might be opting for different things throughout the race to maybe try strategy, because I feel the best strategy here today is the one that avoids traffic the most.
That's a very good point, and I think drivers are gonna try to stay out for as long as possible. It's though you have to say, Edward, it is one of those street circuits where you actually can overtake. The track's plenty wide, and you've got some big braking zones where it is possible to actually get a run alongside. So not the worst street circuit in that regard. A new fastest lap here for Gannon as well. Just get the car logos back on for the race here, but Patrick Gannon absolutely flying at the moment. really doing well for himself.
Just watching him come through now. Darren Fellows, you can see him just in behind Matthew Terry. And driver lapping very nicely indeed. There's his rival, just you can see in the background, the Commander Racing driver Alfredo Tricarici. So he's not quite out of the woods yet, and actually quite a lot of front end damage there from Darren Fellows. He's going to hope to get that repaired in the next pit stop, because
that's a
that is certainly not helping him through the corners.
No.
Major hit. Yeah, I want to see when that happened. Maybe in the opening few laps, because
it's not anything I can. It's going to be hard to see, but we can maybe be just a little bit wiser here. Let's see an onboard start from the perspective of Darren Fellows. Oh, he gets
caught just sitting dark, wasn't he, off of the start?
Really swamped indeed there, badly so.
So this is when there's a bit of a checkup coming out of turn 2, because there's, well, all sorts of havoc. Seems to be alright, but then when there's cars going 4 wide, 5 wide, even if they could just about fit it up ahead, you can see he's being very smart, lifting out of it. We'll see if it is on the opening lap or not. But I'll tell you what, even if it is, this is a great shot, wasn't it, of the opening lap from the driver's perspective, just to see how close everyone was fighting and how scary it can be if you've got that anticipation of an incident up ahead, but one that eventually did not come, thankfully, that did not come as well. So we have a replay here for Remco Barlow.
Yeah, that's that's also a lap 1. That's just the big moment and the following 4 wide situation, and tap to the side of Pete Plastow's Ferrari there as he has to back out of it as well. A lot of argy-bargying going on. I was just gonna see. It looked to me like we had a bit of swapping around for positions, but apparently not. Martin de Jong still on the tail. Oh, Maceroni's gone past though on Martin de Jong, so that's certainly something. Maceroni really giving it a good go after his old moment earlier on. Tells him a bit of a dummy on the exit there. I think de Jong might have just lifted to let Maceroni go on through. And he does seem to be on a stormer of a pace, race pace-wise here, Gaston. So it'll be interesting to see where he is at the end of this race as we are approaching the end of the opening 10 minutes of racing here. Nice to see everybody still running out there, except for that one dude who isn't, and that's sadly to see. That's Chris Pio, I'm afraid. As he's just jumped to the pits, he's just left it again. I wonder what happened there. Might have been some technical hiccup more than anything else, because we haven't really seen anything for Chris Pio.
There might have been a slowdown penalty that became a black flag that he had to serve within a certain amount of time, perhaps.
Yeah, that could.
That's entirely sure.
But I think that would. Chris Pio is an experienced driver. He'd know how to serve his slowdowns. I don't know where you can pick up a slowdown really on this track with all the walls around there.
Where you can pick up one, I would be amazed. But, Cody Steeg, I would say he was cutting close to the wall. There was the sound of a contact there, but didn't seem to unsettle the car too much. And the might of the Mercedes power getting close to the rear end of Tricarici, but not close enough. Thought for a moment that Alfredo had about broken himself there, but he knew better than me and kept it going. Turn 8, turn 9, turn 10. What I tend to do is sort of go wide and then try and hit this apex and stay as close to the left as possible. You can see actually that Tricarici got that pretty much nailed, and the gap that he was able to build out as a result just shows how much you can gain if you just absolutely nail it. Oh my word. Alfredo is really struggling with the rear end of that car while it looks at things ever so close to the wall there, wasn't he?
But it does seem to be very, very difficult indeed here for Cody Steeg and for everybody else. Everybody's sliding around. Everybody's sort of struggling a little bit in terms of keeping everything under control. They're just tagging the curb there on the inside. That's a dangerous thing to do. Wonderful onboard shots we get here. Very dramatic as well, it has to be said. There's a bit of a fight going on here up ahead. That's Nicolas Cucato, reigning champ, with Matthew Terry, who's doing a bit of a blinker, and then Chris Roberts on their tail. Chris Roberts, who's had I was about to say undramatic opening stint, but judging from the damage on his car, it's not quite the case. And I think a lot of drivers will have had not necessarily huge drama here on their opening stints, but just that slight tap here and there, just that little bit of a hiccup, you could say. Of course, they do have their fast repairs for when they come into the pits, so they can all choose to get everything refreshed, so to say, when they come in. Darren Fellows is doing a very good job of hanging on to the tail of this pro driver train. Up ahead, it's Matty Forrest on the tail of Martin de Jong. De Jong seems to have had a bit of trouble, I think, Edward, translating his qualifying pace into the race here.
I think so. He was thrown a little bit off of his rhythm as well through those first two corners. He looked to try and get the inside line on his main rival. I believe it was Mason Baroni, who just tapped the wall, and then that threw him offline, and then he got forced out wide and lost a few positions as a result. And he hasn't quite been able to find his rhythm since. So watch Kukato under a lot of pressure from Matthew Terry there, but
dawned upon me, Edward,
see Matthew go for a move.
Yeah, it just dawned upon me that Kukato, of course, did take that hit as Gaston Maceroni outbreak himself earlier in the race, so that might be...
Could be a bit of damage.
Yeah, I think that might be what he's struggling with. It certainly... It could be, indeed. I don't know if it is, but...
Yeah, his lap times are around about sort of 4/10 or so slower than his teammates, which could point towards maybe a little bit of damage here, but this was Cody Steeg getting past Alfredo Chicarici, who didn't really fight that one too hard. Realised that he was an M-Class driver battling with a pro and thought, I'll get out of his way and see if he can maybe help me catch up to my rival Darren Fellows, as that was Pete Plasdow having a relatively easy overtake. Closing in on the pit window opening. From around about the 15-minute mark, you have half an hour to go, of course, on half a fuel tank. These fuel tanks designed to last for 1 hour. Half of that is, of course, 30 minutes, so you should be able to fit in a pit stop probably after the next lap. That might open up opportunities for drivers to try different strategies, perhaps, see if what they can do to get out ahead of maybe a little bit of traffic they might catch. How close is Patrick Gannon to the tail end of the M-Class? Oh my word, Matthew Terry. That's going to be very brave if you're going to go around the outside through turn 3. And yeah, well, I don't think that was ever a move that was going to be completed there. Well covered off by Matthew Terry. They just, in case he fancied a move, went to the inside and held firm through turn 3. Now just see through 4, 5, and now turn 6. Chris Roberts there getting his line done very nicely, but unfortunately too far back to really capitalise on the run in towards turn 7. Matthew Terry might fancy a little look though up the inside. Let's have a look and see. No, it's staying in behind for the moment. I love this section though. It's so difficult, but if you get it right, it feels so good. That left-hander as close as you come to the wall, then you miss the apex here, then try and hit this one late and stay as close to the left, then open it out on the right. Chris Roberts doing a very good job of that, but I think carrying just a tad too much speed, stopped him getting the power as early as he wanted.
Still impressive to see Kukato being able to defend himself with what clearly is a car that seems to me to be a bit off the pace by the way the train is sort of forming behind him, but he's making very few mistakes and making it very hard for anyone really to get around.
I think a lot of the damage is just out to that rear end tap. It doesn't look so comfortable going through the corners as it does down the straights. Doesn't seem to have lost too much, but he's having to brake a lot earlier into the corners just to keep that rear end stable. If he was trying to go in with the same amount of pace that he was going through at the start, he would really be struggling. So we might see drivers with a bit of damage. Maybe the likes of Darren Fellows, maybe the likes of Nicholas Kakato coming in for potentially an earlier pit stop than planned, just to get that damage serviced and have a car that's in the best condition for as long as possible. Drivers, of course, they have one fast repair in this race. They can get all the damage done, gotten rid of. But once they've done that, they have no lifeline. If something happens to them later on in the race, there's no way back for them.
That's a good point. And you can really see just how much both the damage that people have picked up has been hampering them, but also the fact that once you're caught in between the slower cars, there really is no quick way through it. It is a bad place to be caught in between here. Martin de Jong is in the pits here. That's relatively early, so we'll have to see what that's all about. Of course, it looked like he might have had a bit of damage as well, and he is now within the final 30 minutes of the race, so... Well, that's about the time you could get that fixed now.
So the rear end did actually have a significant knock that you didn't really notice until you saw it get repaired, and then you realised, that's what it was supposed to look like. So Martin de Jong there patched his car back up. Does he come out into traffic? Not too much in behind Pete Plasdow, but Pete Plasdow, he was very quick himself, and he's just recently fixed his car as well, so you wouldn't imagine Martin de Jong to be getting caught out too much by that. Might affect him by the end of the race, depends of course on the sort of pace that he can find at this stage. Imagining that essentially Pete Plasdow will need to pit in, I think, the last sort of 5 or so minutes of the race. Might not work out in his favour come the end, but we'll see what he can do. He's in clear air now, so the chance to make up ground is now. On board with Matt Sizzler, the tail end of a very long train of AM-class drivers, seeing if he can carve his way through. That very nice exit, gaining a lot there on Tony van der Linden. But nowhere really he can pass at this moment. Needs to wait until maybe turn 3 if he can fancy a move.
Gets a much better run than van der Linden through there, and this might be an opportunity. Van der Linden would do wisely not to fight it too hard, but of course he doesn't want to lose the time that it takes to get overtaken as well. He is in a battle for position with Ari Sherwood and Alfredo Tricarici, and he's just right off the podium steps, so it does make sense that he's trying his best to not let Sizzler get in, but you could imagine that Matt Sizzler might be able to move on through this pack here and sort of help him at a later stage at the race, so could be a bit of strategy to just trying to let Matt Sizzler through easily. Although saying that, at the moment, it's van der Linden who's really putting down the pace. And Baron Glover, I'm afraid, Edward, has had an issue here. Let's see what happened.
Oh dear, let's have a look.
Oh, touches the...
Dear,
oh my word!
Very strange incident, but like just a drop in concentration.
Oh, it's Fellows!
Maybe a distraction.
It's Fellows! Darren Fellows! The M-Class leader has gone all of his own, and he's gone and massively messed it up, I'm afraid. Manages to keep it off the race line. He's been, as I said, that maybe a tad too early. That car is not in a good shape, Edward.
He's going to come into the pits now, surely. That is a huge, huge moment for the AM-Class. Just takes it a little bit too hot in. Oof, oh dear, oh dear. Yeah. Did the right thing though, got well out of the way. Made sure that there weren't any other cars coming by as he managed to get himself back up to racing speed. And Darren Fellows now into the pits, but that is a lot of time, a lot of positions he's just lost out on with a fresh car. He's going to be one to watch to see what he can do, but that dropped him all the way back in behind Matt Maddox and that fight we were watching a little while with Matt Sizzler. So into the pits with a fresh car, Darren Fellows. Coming out here, Matt Sizzler. In behind, like you say, the trio of AM-Class cars, all on the podium, Tricarici, Sherwood and van der Linden. But as Matthew Terry, I think he says he's out. I don't think he's getting back onto the...
A little bit of an early stop for Gaston here. Terry's got...
That's because of that amount of traffic that he's just found himself almost a part of. He's a little ways behind Matt Sizzler, so maybe that'll help him out, but Martin de Jong will see, well, that his rivals are going to be catching up into traffic, and I think actually a lot of the times that Martin de Jong has been doing, it's actually brought him closer into this fight. in that clear air. That's really helped him out quite a lot now.
Meanwhile, out ahead, it's still Patrick Gannon, comfortably leading proceedings by 2.5 seconds or so, down to Charlie Lund-Nielsen. Both of these drivers doing a really good job as darkness is setting in here. Very nice timing of the race in terms of just finding sunset. Charlie Lund-Nielsen there. As you said earlier, Edward, still keeping the race leader honest, but not really able to make any huge inroads. But what we've seen before is that these 2 seconds or so can disappear terribly quickly over the course of a pit stop. So if the driver has been saving a bit of fuel, or being able to just cut off a bit on pit entrance and exit, we might see a difference once they leave the pits. Hopes are high, at least.
Patrick Gannon catching up to a little bit of traffic here, so we might see something. I just thought for a moment I saw into turn 7 there might have been.
Oh, there is a bit of traffic up ahead.
Yeah, have a look, sure. Just out around. Yeah, a little bit of traffic here, so that could come into play. I believe that's Pete Plastow and Darren Fellows sort of scrapping away for 18th place. Real shame to see Pete Plastow down so far after the promising start to the race and promising qualifying. The race just hasn't quite gone his way, but a lot of times that just happened, doesn't it, As? So you can have a great qualifying, have a great start to the race, but then all of a sudden it can just start to unravel.
Yeah, and it's the good old tale of...
Hang on a minute. Actually, hang on, Hasse. I've just noticed. Sorry to cut across you there, but Charlie Lund-Nielsen 0.4 of a second quicker than Patrick Gannon on that last lap, so never mind keeping him honest. He might be reeling him back in.
You have to
Especially
wonder...
even more so now as Patrick Gannon is right up behind the traffic there. You can see it now.
It's a good point. You have to wonder just where those 0.4 of a second came from. We didn't see any mistakes really from Gannon, but they could have snuck in somewhere along the way, one way or the other, and it's...
Charlie's going to close in a lot here. Patrick Gannon is getting held up. Something fierce.
Yeah, you see the tenths bleeding away here, Edward. Look at this. 1.5 seconds now to what was 2 before. He's cleared one of the cars. That was Darren Fellows.
If I was Charlie Nielsen, I would come into the pits pretty much now, just so you don't get caught up in the traffic yourself, and you might find yourself out ahead. But no, he opts to stay out a little while longer. So is that maybe going to help him, or will that hinder him? We shall see. But Charlie is definitely closing in on Patrick Gannon right now.
I think he reckons he can still do a lap without really getting caught up behind the 2 others, and then sort of minimize time spent out on track. But it would be a brilliant time to do the pit stop. You get shuffled back a little bit, but you wouldn't really risk losing too much time battling other cars, since everybody else would sort of have to pit in anyways. And relatively soon at it as well. So interesting to see. If I was the race engineer for Charlie Lund-Nielsen, I'd be telling him, box, mate, it's time to come in. But we'll see if that kind of resonates with his original race strategy and how flexible he's going to be with it. Because
he doesn't want to lose time for no reason. That's the key point. You don't want to lose time for no reason. If you're going to overtake these cars and then pit the next lap, why not just pit that little bit earlier and not lose that time to begin with?
That's exactly the point. And Patrick Gannon has actually lost whatever time he gained on the last few laps. Or I'm sorry, Charlie Lund-Nielsen, of course, has lost to Patrick Gannon, just being caught up behind the traffic here. Doesn't come in on this lap either, so he stays out. He keeps it rolling. But I must say I'm a little bit surprised to see it here. Ari Sherwood on the tail of Trickerici, then it's Tony van der Linden. This 3-way scrap And this is now actually really interesting, Edward. It's kind of flown under my nose, at least. I don't know about you, but this is the battle for the lead in the AM class 1, 2, and 3. Coanda, Apex Tech, and Stage 1, 3 BMWs going at it hard. And this could really turn interesting over the final 15 minutes of racing.
Trick coming in early. He's the first driver of this trio to come to the pits. And I did pick up on this after we saw Darren Fellows have his moment earlier on. That sort of dropped behind those three drivers, and that basically gave all of them a podium place. But what will Chikorichi do? Where will he come out ahead, potentially, of Matt Maddox? Where's Darren Fellows, his main rival that we saw?
Oh, he's
had a
far
decent
behind.
margin, but then after that mistake, it's just coming through turn 11 now and having to get out of the way of Charlie Lund Nilsson. Tricorici is making his way out of the pit lane now. So Tricorici will come out ahead of Darren Fellows, but most importantly, that could allow a bit of an inroad. If Tricorici gets caught by Sherwood and Van der Linden and they start to battle, all of a sudden they'll slow each other up, and maybe Darren Fellows finds a way back into this and finds a way to get a podium.
Yeah. It's going to be difficult.
Wishful thinking, I know, but we want to see as many cars as possible battling for those podium places in class.
It's about 13 seconds from Tricorici to Darren Fellows at the moment, so it's certainly not impossible. You know, we've seen crazier things happen, but it's going to be a big ask for Darren Fellows to put himself back into contention for the AM class lead. Matt Sisseler and Gaston Maceroni. Maceroni's still going at it with Sisseler here. He had that early pit stop, but he's still carrying damage, which is sort of surprising to me. Must have had another touch somewhere, you would expect, because why wouldn't you take the fast repair coming in? Maybe that's just a mistake, I'm not quite sure. Regardless, he's not getting it done with Matt Sisseler here, and that means a lot of time lost to the drivers that he was originally battling further up ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure at all, as Matt Maddox has now come into the pits. So that basically sees him get overtaken by Alfredo Tricorici. The key point is to watch for Ari Sherwood and Van der Linden in that class. Sherwood has actually been able to build out a nice, comfortable margin to Tony Van der Linden after the pit stop of Tricorici. Oh, that was Maceroni going for a move up the inside of Matt Sisseler, who seemed to get caught out just a bit, but managed to keep himself out of trouble and out of getting contact. So he covered the inside, but not enough, as Maceroni sent it up the inside, but credit to him, didn't run wide, didn't hit the curves or hit the barriers on the exit, so a very nice committed move there by the Argentine. Martin de Jong now finds himself right up behind Sisseler. Matt, who is yet to pit, and decides to do so now.
It's going to be interesting to see.
Van der Linden in.
Yeah, Van der Linden, which means Sherwood goes the extra lap.
Oh, it was actually Van der Linden just overshot his pit box.
Yeah.
Had to reverse, and that has cost him a lot of time. Those crucial seconds, we'll probably see Alfredo Tricorici comfortably out in front. Here we go. Through turn 12, 13. Watch for Van der Linden. When is it going to say he's on pit exit? 'Cause that's when he is moving. He is still yet to move as Tricorici comes past into second place.
Comfortably past. He's doing much too much fuel here, I think, Edward. He's been stationary for a long...
I think he's serving a penalty.
Yeah.
I think he was speeding in the pits, Hasse.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I've seen Darren Fellows now up into third place.
Incredible indeed. Back onto the podium places. And mind you, that was 12, 13 seconds before. It's now under 9 seconds to Tricorici. So Darren Fellows, now with a working set of wheels underneath him, is really putting down the hammer. He'll have to get past on Pete Plastow here. Plastow,
how far back is Tricorici from Matt Sisseler? Because there's a little bit of traffic potentially for Tricorici.
He's 7/10 of a second.
Not far at all. So we've already seen Matt Sisseler struggling just a touch. He was overtaken by an excellent diving move by the Argentine of Messeroni.
And here comes Sherwood.
Into the pits he is. The American driver, home soil, trying to take his first AM-class victory of the season. He's up and running. Where is Tricarici? He is nowhere near at the moment, is he? He's just going to have Cody Steeg past. Matt Sisseler not in the picture at all. So Ari Sherwood comes into the pits, out of the pits, holding on to class lead.
Brilliant, brilliant final bit of the stint there. Really smart move there. Taking the pit stop so late, being able to just stretch it ever so slightly. The gap between Fellows and Tricarici now 7 seconds as Darren Fellows is getting a good tow here from Pete Plastow. Just looking at the lap times at the moment. On the last lap here, Darren Fellows was a fair bit quicker actually than Pete Plastow. And more importantly so though, they were 2 seconds quicker than Alfredo Tricarici.
Very interesting to see what Darren Fellows can do. You say he's pretty much going toe-to-toe with Pete Plastow, who is an out-and-out pro driver. Darren is certainly impressing in his debut season of the Sunday GT Masters. Okay, so the light level has definitely dropped now. You can pretty much just see the headlights of the drivers coming through. Patrick Gannon, Charlie Dunn-Nilsson, they've done their pit stops and they're still first and second. Remco Barlow, third place for him. What's great to see though is that 3 drivers of different teams are all taking different spots of the podium. You've got the RPM Racing driver Patrick Gannon currently leading, the independent driver of Charlie Dunn-Nilsson in second, and then Coanda Racing represented by Remco Barlow in third, and then actually in fourth place another driver with a different team, Matthew Forrest. What a comeback he's been able to provide for us, currently in fourth place for Virtual Racing Compound.
Still comfortable gap here between Ari Sherwood and Alfredo Tricarici of about 8 seconds or so. Darren Fellows though on Tricarici. Look at that, he's right there! Oh, that's gonna be an interesting final 10 minutes. Darren Fellows, nobody would have expected him to be able to come back and claw back maybe even just a podium place in the first place after that incident. Yet alone talk about second now. It's been a great race, bar that one loss of concentration for Darren Fellows. What a way to be to end it. Oh, a little bit of a shake of the tail there through the final sector. And like this track isn't difficult enough to deal with in the first place, Edward. They have to do so in the sort of twilight here, which is always a tricky time and a tricky sort of light condition to race under.
Yeah, with the interesting use of the headlight flash there from Pete Plastow. I'm not sure why he opted to do that. Maybe just trying to let somebody know that he's coming through. It might be Baron Glover, but Baron is not close enough to really need a headlight flash at this stage. Gaston Messeroni currently in 5th place, second of the Coanda Racing drivers. Remco Barlow obviously being first of the Coanda Racing drivers in 3rd place. I wonder if there are any hard feelings or not between Messeroni and Kakato after Messeroni did outbrake himself into turn 3 in the opening few laps. Saw the battle driver Kakato really damaged and put out of shape. I don't know, we might see something of that later on, but for now, Messeroni is going to try and make amends by passing the driver that he actually managed to let pass his teammate. This is Matthew Forrest, just up the road. Actually bringing that gap down by 1/10 of a second last time by was Messeroni. Last season's champion, if memory serves right. Actually, no, it's Kakato, I think. either way, Mace Run in the first round of the championship. That is for certain. That is something I do remember.
And it's going to be interesting.
Trips to the podium.
Interesting to see the scrap for points as well this season. So far, Remco Barlow's doing a really good job of staying consistent throughout. And he's still within sort of touching distance of Charlie Lund-Nielsen, though he's lost 0.2 of a second on the last lap. Patrick Gannon flew around quicker than anyone on the lap before these, so...
Another thing as well, Hasse, if you go to beat Plasnow, he is right up behind Alfredo Tricarici at this moment in time. Look at how close they all are for position. That has really suddenly came down to a close fight. And is Pete Plasnow going to fancy a move? Perhaps he's having a bit of a flash of the headlights. I think all of them are, to be honest. A huge gaggle of cars trying to find their way through. And oh my word, there's been contact. And I think, is that going to be a move all of a sudden around the outside? There's a huge amount of net code.
Yeah, massive
there was
net
not
code.
Contact at all. And all of a sudden, that's seen Pete Plasnow. He just can't catch a break, Hasse. But oh my word, they always come to touch between Darren Fellows and Tricarici.
We're going to take a look at...
Huge commiserations there for Pete Plasnow. We'll have a look at the replay, I think, like you were going to mention.
In a moment, but we're just going to
see how unlucky he was.
We're just going to stay with this for a second, because I think Darren Fellows is very close to being able to put in the move here on Alfredo Tricarici. Oh, the BMW stretching in his legs. Oh, he got a little bit of a touch there. Oh, Fellows has to be careful now not to pick up a penalty. Oh, there's a massive net code for the first one.
Darren Fellows knows he's quicker. He can bide his time. I don't think he's going to be able to get the move done on Ari Sherwood, so he doesn't need to be too aggressive. But here's the replay between Darren Fellows. Watching, you can see here from Darren Fellows' point of view, huge amount of net code.
Yeah, just as he comes
into
in,
the corner.
It's not even Fellows. It's not Darren Fellows causing that net code.
Not Darren Fellows causes the net code. It is the car on the inside of Alfredo Tricarici. It was more as Pete Plasnow turns into the corner, is what I was meaning. And as he turns in, there is just a huge amount of net code.
Yeah, and Matthew Terry.
I mean, it's really unfortunate. I want to see how it all came to pass, though, because Tricarici was very slow into turn 7.
Good point. Here, first the situation with Matthew Terry, who taps the wall there on the outside. That's rather unlucky. Here it is again with Plasnow and company.
Just catch a bit too late there. We don't see exactly how Tricarici got held up into turn 7. I think it might have been from Matt Sizzler, or actually no, it was from the Apex Tech Ferrari.
And there was contact
there. That's the 1-2-4 of Andy Spicer. Blue flags were being waved for him, so that might be looked at.
Look at the damage on Plasnow's car there. That's going to be pretty hard. Spicer's now had an incident of his own here, Edward. He's just gone and lost the rear.
Oh my word. As
those drivers will be happy that the car of Andy Spicer sort of got dragged into the wall there, because that could easily have been thrown across the track for him, and it didn't. So that was sort of lucky here. Martin de Jong, he's got Nicolas Cucato on his tail now, de Jong, so he's been sort of bleeding positions and time as well. Not optimal. Tricarici, by the way, is still ahead of Darren Fellows. So Fellows, who had such good pace about him before, Tricarici's really picked it up. Here's now 4 minutes left of the race. Just how it's gonna end up, I don't know.
Pushing a bit too hard. His tyres are starting to overheat. Thankfully, the night time and the lower temperatures are going to help with that. But I think being so close for so long has really cooked his fronts, and now he's having to wait a little while longer. As soon as we said that he was losing a bit of time, he managed to find it back. So I think it was all about just trying to calm the tyres down, cycle out the heat, and then get it back up to that sort of perfect optimum temperature window. So now we're going to start to see him properly start fighting. And into turn 1, this is where Darren Fellows is very quick indeed. He's got a fancy move up the inside, a very optimistic move, as there isn't really a huge amount of slowing down for turn 1 and turn 2 needed. He's going to get a decent exit and maybe fancy a lunge up the inside from turn 3. If he fakes it to the inside, then the outside, going all the way around the outside now. He's very late on the brakes, but is he going to make it through without contact? Side by side still. Great racing. They're giving each other just enough room. And Tricarici concedes the position. We didn't quite get to see the way they went side by side, but I think Tricarici was very kind here. We're going to have a look all the way around the outside. Darren Fellows. He's just got the confidence, the bravery to fully swing it around the outside. An excellent move.
Fair play.
Somehow claw back a second place.
Fair play to Tricarici as well, staying on the inside, leaving the space for Darren Fellows to complete the move without any incident. Brilliant move there. Overtake of the race so far, if you ask me. Here's Matthew Forrest still fighting off Gaston Maceroni. He's doing a pretty good job, to be honest. They're 17, 18 seconds down on Remco Barlow, who's closing the gap to Charlie Lund-Nielsen, and it's almost down to a second, Edward. Look at this. With just a few minutes left of the race, Remco Barlow's pushing on for a podium place. He's already got one.
He's already got.
He wants to make it a better podium place. He wants to improve upon it. What a surprise. Headline news. Racing driver wants better results.
I'm not sure what the symbol is. If we go into his cockpit, are we going to see him flip 2 fingers up and say that he's going for second? As John Cleland famously did in GTCC, of course.
That's a very good double pun there, Edward.
Have a little look at Remco Barlow. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get that second position that he's so desperately trying to take away from the Swede. He's left it very late in the race, and I think we've only got maybe one more lap after this one. It was very close as they came across the line, but I think we might see Patrick Gannon come across the line at maybe the 44-minute and 55-second mark or something, very close till the end. So we might get one more lap out of it after this one. It does give Remco Barlow a little more time to close down up to the rear end of Charlie Lund-Nielsen. But as soon as you get into that sort of 7/10 to half a second window, you get a huge amount of aero wash, and that hurts you a lot on a street circuit like Belle Isle.
Especially with all the medium speed corners there through the opening sector. That's really something we've seen. It's not an easy place to follow him closely, especially not lap after lap. Barlow has lost a bit of time back on Charlie Lund-Nielsen. Now, whether Charlie Lund-Nielsen was maybe saving a bit of fuel, make sure he could push till the end, that might have been the case. There's so much going on often in these sort of tactical games here. Matthew Forrest having to hold off Maceroni. And now you're having to wonder, is he going to be successful with it? It's a very good question here. Oh, someone's just touched the barrier in behind there. That wasn't
come across the line with about 10 seconds to go, Hasse. So we will have one more lap to come. They've been greeted by the white flag. As that maybe, though, threw a spanner in the works. Some drivers might have been planning for potentially one lap less and not expecting the leaders to be as quick as they were. So maybe we will see drivers run out of fuel, or maybe need to do a lot of fuel saving later on into the race. Could be interesting for some of the drivers that came in very early. I believe Gaston Maceroni was the driver that came in early, and I thought he blinked out for a minute. I didn't thought when he came out that meant he was in the pits, but his internet has dropped and has continued to drop. Has he dropped out? And he's dropping positions.
Oh, he's back.
He's just about reappeared, but reappeared ahead of who was that?
What just happened? What just happened to Maceroni? I have absolutely no idea. He sort of
watched that from which car was that? It's difficult to see because for me it was just an all-white BMW.
We're gonna have a look at that once we get the drivers across the checkered flag here. Patrick Gannon taking the win ahead of Charlie Lund-Nielsen and Remco Barlow, just half a second off in the end there. And in the AM class, it's gonna be Ari Sherwood. Is Cucato gonna finish ahead of Maceroni here? Actually, this is gonna be an interesting one to the line. Look at this. This is Chris Roberts on the tail of Maceroni. Maceroni who's gotten passed on Chris Roberts. Chris Roberts is wants to have none of it.
Maceroni's just about going to finish in 7th place, which is pretty extraordinary considering that he was airborne for, well, about a good 5 seconds during that final lap.
It was pretty amazing. And then our M-Class winner, Edward, here, Ari Sherwood's done a brilliant job so far.
Perfect strategy.
Perfect strategy. Perfect execution as well in the race.
Alfredo Tricarici, before the first round of pit stops, opted to go longer, have time in clear air, and it just worked perfectly for them. I mean, it was a brilliant strategy. Look at the headlight flash and the little wiggle as they come across the line. Excellent drive from Ari, the American, winning on home soil. About 2 Americans winning both of their classes on home soil, haven't they? Patrick Gannon for RPM Racing, Ari Sherwood for Apex Tech in the AM class.
So there we have it, race results on screen, and we're just gonna do them because we don't have that many cars on track tonight. Patrick Gannon, the overall winner, and of course in pro as well, ahead of Charlie Lund Nielsen, and Remco Barlow taking the final podium spot. Matthew Forrest in 4th place ahead of Martin DeYoung, Nicolas Zuccato, Gaston Maceroni, Chris Roberts, Matthew Terry, and Cody Steek rounding off the top 10. And Ari Sherwood taking the win in AM ahead of Darren Fellows and Alfredo Tricarici in between the two. Well, Matt Sisseler. And then before Alfredo Tricarici, we've got Pete Plasto as well there. Matt Maddox, Tony van der Linden, Baron Glover, and of course, at the end of things, Andy Spicer and Chris Pio, who was amongst the less fortunate for this race tonight. Edward, you promised action, and I think action we received.
We were certainly given plenty of it. I wonder how much more we'll be seeing in the going rounds, because I think we've had about 5 rounds worth of action all in the space of 45 minutes. It has been absolutely electrifying here at Belle Isle. The 3rd round of the Sunday GT Masters has thrown up a fair few number of surprises, but yet again Remco Barlow scoring good points should see him with a good standing in the championship after this. And a lot of his rivals struggling. I mean, Nicolas Zuccato and Gaston Maceroni really not having the best of evenings, all the way down in 6th and 7th. Definitely a lot of head scratching, I think, that needs to go on in Kawai Racing.
So while we're waiting for the drivers to filter into the interview waiting room, please don't take too long. There's a football game happening that I'd like to catch the final 20 minutes up. Denmark's up 2-0 on France in the Nation League. Not the worst results to Dane.
Very good for a Dane.
And with that said, Edward, we do have a driver that I think you would very much like to have a word with here. It's Darren Fellows having a word with Edward May.
Welcome, Darren, to the comms booth, and I have to say that was a very exciting up and down race from you. We saw you with heavy damage in the first stint, and then that little spin towards the end of your first run, and I mean, it was a great fight back through the field, but just talk us through what issues came up in the first stint, because you missed the damage.
So something's happened to my brake pedal. Not quite sure what, but I've got a massive dead zone in the front of it. And I think it happened while I was going around the corner. And obviously I've just hit the barrier and just spun on the tyre. So yeah, a bit of a nightmare. Had to try and crawl back to the pits and just trying to get around with a weird brake pedal for the rest of the race, really.
And what happened with the initial incident you had? Because we saw you have a huge amount of front end damage. I'm not sure if you were aware of it being in the cockpit, but there was a huge chunk taken out the front splitter in the centre.
So yeah, there was a bit of a concertina effect, and I hit whoever's in front of me just on after the horseshoe part where you got the tight right. So it was a bit of a nightmare, but luckily it was square on, so no damage for him. I think I got most of it, so that's good.
And then after, obviously, your half spin, you know what it's like here in the street circuit. Did you ever think that you could fight back and get a podium, even a second place, or did you think, oh, that's it, race is over?
No, I saw the time coming down to Tricarici, so I knew I was on pace, but I was just hoping that he was in first. But unfortunately, there was Sherwood was in front of him, so it was what it was. I'm happy with second. I'm kicking myself I didn't get first, but it's a good recovery from what I had.
Yeah, very good drive from you, considering you are in the AM class. You're mixing that with some of the pros. I mean, Pete Plastow wasn't much quicker than you when we saw you both trying to reel in Trickerichi. Sure, that's got to give you a lot of confidence for the future rounds, and maybe even future seasons. You might be getting bumped up to pro after this one.
I did say that to my teammate. I think I'm going to end up in pro for the next one. But yeah, no, I think I was lucky. I had loads of slipstream from him, and obviously, yeah, Trickerichi obviously had damage towards the end, so it was just a case of just counting down the laps and getting closer, and then having that kind of one opportunity. I was able to go around the outside and just overtake him. So yeah, luckily I was on 13x as well, so I couldn't afford to have another accident.
But if you're in a car better than the Ferrari, I reckon you'd be able to get a few more laps. Maybe even you'd be mixing up with some of the top guys in pro class. You never know, of course. How have you found the Ferrari though this season? It isn't necessarily the strongest car in the GT3 class, but it is certainly stable.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's my thing. I was going to go with the Mercedes, but it wasn't stable for me. Whereas I can push a lot more with the Ferrari. So yeah, it's not the fastest, but for me, it just feels a lot easier to drive and gives me that little bit more speed and confidence that I need.
And of course, congratulations on your result here tonight. Another podium going your way. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to on the broadcast?
So I want to shout out to Rich at SimLab and also Acertech for the pedals. And yeah, let's get them fixed and get ready for next week.
All the best, Darren. Cheers for the nice words.
Take care.
So, Hasse, we've just had a quick chat with Darren Fellows, and joining us in the comments box is someone that I think you would like to have a word with. Charlie Nilsson, second place in the pro classes, joining us now.
Welcome,
hey guys.
Welcome to the booth, Charlie, and congratulations on a strong race indeed. Just lacking the very, very last to be on the final step. And also in the end maybe feeling a bit of pressure there from Remco Barlow.
Yeah, Remco was certainly much faster at the end of the race than he was in the middle of the race, and also of course Pete and Darren I think didn't help with the blue flags, but yeah, finally a race where I have some luck, I guess.
And a bit of a chaotic start also. How did you see that whole four wide down the back straight situation on lap 1?
Luckily in the mirror. I think me and Patrick got a really good start, and I saw there was some chaos in the rearview mirror, but I think Gaston saved it pretty well, if I'm correct.
It was still relatively early days in the season here, Charlie. A very good result and a good points haul that must give you sort of a belief that you can really be in there in the pointy end once the season ends.
Yeah, I hope so. I think I got some strong tracks on the calendar where maybe the Audi finally proves to be a good choice. But we'll see.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us, Charlie. It's been a true pleasure having you in. Is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to before we let you go and have a chill post-race?
Yeah, thank you too, guys. I would like to give a shout out to my father and my co-worker Hasse, who I know is watching.
What a beautiful name. What a beautiful name indeed, Charlie. Nice. To your father and to Hasse as well. Thanks for the support. I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you guys. Incredible work as always.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us, and I do hope we get another chance to have a talk with you after one of these next races here.
Yeah, me too. See ya.
So for the final interview of the day, Edward, it's going to be your choice, AM or Pro class winner.
Oh, it's tricky because I think let's have a chat with Darren Fellows. I think we've had a chat with Ari previously.
We've already had a chat with Darren Fellows. You can bring him in again if you think he's that interesting.
Patrick Gannon, that's the one. Patrick Gannon, let's bring him in. If I could, I would bring in both the class winners, but let's bring in Patrick, who joins us in the comms booth. And Patrick, I have to say that was a marvellous drive from yourself, getting the first win of the season. And you look faultless. Lights to flag, pole position. You had the lot fastest lap as well. You got to be pleased with that, surely.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? My car felt like it was on rails, so the driving felt pretty easy around here. So I don't know. I'm really happy with the result.
How did you find the BMW? Because it's a car that tends to favour more understeer than oversteer, and on a street circuit, understeer can be your worst nightmare. So what was it like trying to manage that throughout the race?
It was pretty difficult, but I had asked one of my teammates to help me make a setup, and we basically got rid of a lot of the understeer. So that really helped rotate the car through a lot of the corners.
Well, obviously, Belle Isle, it was a circuit that you've dominated tonight, but was it one that you were thinking was going to be a favourable track for you coming into it, or was it one that you thought, oh, there might be some other guys that might be quicker than me tonight?
It's definitely one of my favorite tracks, so I knew coming into it I would have some pace. I just didn't know how much. But luckily enough today, I had enough pace.
Obviously, you were quick with the physical aspect, obviously getting the inputs down to a T, but how was it like on the mental side? The pressure was constantly there from Charlie, who was never more than 2 seconds back from you. How was it in the race, just trying to deal with that constant presence?
I don't know. It was pretty difficult, but I just kind of took every corner step by step and just approached it like that and kind of didn't worry about what was going on behind me.
And the other aspect as well of this race was going to be key was the strategy. Did you feel that going longer was the right for you? Because we did see a few times where traffic did start to play a part, and we thought maybe he was going to pit earlier, maybe he was going to try and get the traffic earlier on, or maybe try and pit before the traffic, but you stuck with it. And I mean, to be fair, you proved both of us wrong. You made it work.
Yeah, I didn't have to really... I mean, I did have to worry about a little bit of traffic, but I was able to get through the traffic in some good spots, so I wasn't really slowed down too much. But I wasn't necessarily worried on the strategy too much. I wasn't confident enough saving fuel and maintaining my pace, so I kind of just let the tank run out and just filled it up with what I thought was going to be enough for the end.
And then, of course, we go to the Nürburgring in a week's time. Is that a circuit that you've got confidence that you feel that you can get a good result?
Yeah, Nürburgring's a really fun track, so I'm hoping I have some pace. I have raced it before in some leagues, but hopefully we'll have enough pace. So
fingers crossed, bud. Well, as well, congratulations on the excellent result. First race victory of the season for yourself, I believe. Is there anybody you would like to give a shout out to on the broadcast now?
Well, I want to thank you guys for putting on an awesome league. It's been pretty fun so far. And I also want to thank my teammate for helping me develop this setup that was able to keep me super consistent.
No problem, but thanks for your kind words, and we're wishing you all the best in a week's time when we see you at the Nürburgring.
Oh, here we go. But we're gonna grab a quick extra interview because we've got a first-time winner, and Ari Sherwood, and we couldn't let him win without having a word. Ari, congratulations on your maiden win here in the series. Beautiful race. It turned out to be perfect for you, didn't it?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of funny because to be honest, I actually hadn't practiced all week. Hadn't actually been in the sim for almost 2 weeks. So I just kind of figured, all right, well, I'll jump into the practice session and see how things go. And just with the goal of just trying to keep it safe and steady. And yeah, just try to keep it between the walls, and ended up with a couple of miscues ahead of me, and ended up with my first P1. So pretty awesome. Tough track though.
Yeah, and about that, how hard was it to keep it between the walls with all the chaos going on, especially in the opening laps of the race there?
So, I was just telling myself, like, stay back, from the opening crowd into T3 there, and just, wait to see if any incidents happen. And there was, I think, just one small one. And then just, like, stick to the guys in front of you. But as it got darker with no lights, boy, that was tricky, because that was not something that, I had practiced for. And so I was just trying to, keep the lap times consistent. not try to get too aggressive and just keep it off the walls. But managed to do it.
A brilliant race indeed. Having found this kind of success here, is there anything you're thinking that you'll be able to take along till the next races in the season?
Man, I hope so. I mean, you know, I didn't think I had outright speed on this track, and I'm still probably, you know, a couple guys down the totem pole here in terms of, you know, my outright speed, but it's getting better. And I think as the season goes on, hopefully I can keep working at it and keep chipping away and, you know, chip away half a second here or a second there and maybe have a shot to grab it this season.
Well, Ari, congratulations on your first win. Brilliant stuff indeed. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat with us. Is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to before going off and celebrating in style?
Sure, yeah. Well, of course, thanks to you guys for doing a great job. Love listening to you on the broadcast. And of course, thanks to my team, Apex Technologies and the Apex Tech community team, and all of our great sponsors, Pro SimRig and HD Anywhere. And yeah, all the guys on my team for supporting me and racing with me. So appreciate it.
Brilliant stuff. That was Ari Sherwood, our M-Class winner. And that's going to be the last interviewee for tonight after a brilliant round of action here from Detroit, Belle indeed. Edward May alongside myself. Hasse Rømer, of course, a great thanks to Advanced Sim Racing for sponsoring this series and making it possible in the first place. Thanks to VRC for having me in it in the first place. And then... well, I guess all that remains to be said is that we'll see all of you, hopefully, and a bit more, in 2 weeks' time at the Nürburgring. Any closing statements, Edward?
No, it's been obviously an excellent evening's worth of racing here at Belle Isle. It did not disappoint in the slightest. Some people think that, oh, with streets, they're processional, but it was anything but, wasn't it, here tonight? And we go to a more conventional circuit in a week's time at the Nürburgring, flying all the way across the globe, across the Atlantic to Germany for what is set to be an excellent round of racing. Big dives we will expect to see into turn one, that heavy braking zone. There's going to be some exciting moments, that's for certain. So don't go anywhere. Keep it tuned to, of course, VRC for a week's time when we have yet another exciting round, the fourth round of the GT Sunday Masters.
So to everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And as Ed just said, it's going to be 2 weeks' time. It's going to be right here on VRC. And it's going to be with myself and Edward May yet again. So until then, take care, have fun, and bye-bye.